Good morning, my fellow Canadians. Well, comment du jour. I was watching a Facebook video. The teacher, it looked like a kindergarten class, brought in two transsexuals. I realize I'm old. I realize the Canada in which I grew up is very different. The political landscape, the social landscape, the civil landscape of my country has been degraded, I think, first by Trudeau Sr. and now by the Liberal Party. You will note I do not blame Trudeau Jr. because he's too damn stupid. It's his party that he speaks for that is destroying, and I don't use that word lightly, destroying my country, my Canada. Back to these transsexuals. I understand. I'm old. I understand it's a different landscape, like I said. I understand that the mores are different, sexual mores are different. Children today are exposed to a lot more information. They're not necessarily smarter, but they are better informed than I was at their age, because there is greater access to information. I mean, let's face it, our reference in my age, it was a library, or if you had a home encyclopedia set. So information is out there. I'm of two minds about this. I understand that a lot of behavior that was in the closet in my youth is now more overt. I understand that. I direct you to the word aberrant. Aberrant means departing from a normal standard, divergent from the norm, okay? Homosexuality is aberrant. Aberrant is not an insult. It's not a pejorative. It means exactly what I said it means. A departure from the norm. Now, considering that the last stat I read that homosexuals comprise, well, same-sex relationships, homosexuals, lesbians comprise approximately 10% of the population. Yeah, they're in a recognized segment of society, but it is aberrant. And like I said, if you get your nose out of joint, you don't understand the meaning of the word. The fact that it's no longer criminal, I think that's a good thing. Back to these kids, kindergarten kids being exposed to a couple of drag queens, transsexuals. At what age do you start educating your children about the sexual stereotypes, the sexual differences, shall we say, and the sexual variants? Kindergarten? Okay, what's next? Shall we teach them about bondage and discipline? Shall we bring in some bondage and discipline specialists? Dominatrix? Domination and submission specialists? Shall we bring in necrophiliacs? Shall we bring in pedophiles? Where does it stop? These are children. To educate them as to the fact that there are differences in our society, yeah, because we are a more accepting society. But for the love of God, let the children be children. There is a whole lifetime to learn about these things, to be exposed to these things. Definitely teach them in school when it is age appropriate. Who determines what is age appropriate? If I was a parent, I would tell the educators, I will decide when my child will learn about the sexual mores and sexual differences when I feel that they are intelligent enough and mature enough to start to grasp the concept. They would have been taught from an early age tolerance, but they would not have been exposed to that degree at that age. That's my personal opinion. So what the hell happened? I've touched on this before. Academia is responsible for an incredible amount of stupidity in today's educational system. I have and had friends who worked within the school boards here in the Toronto region. So I had something of an insider's viewpoint on some of the things that the average is not reported or the average person would not be exposed to. Okay? And some of the things I was told, and I was just like, whoa, what? Like, you're kidding me. And nope. One, just as an example, and this was way back, one female history teacher demanded that in her class it be spelt Hystorry. She objected to the HIS as being sexist. And I don't know what came of that, but I will tell you this. Being an old school Canadian, if I'd have been a parent, I would have gone to that school. I'd have taken this stun bitch by the throat and said, listen, lady, you will teach my kid the curriculum and teach them how to spell properly. I don't care if this is your personal bias. You stupid cow. You don't push this at the kids. You teach them the curriculum. When my kid goes out and spells history, HYS, and someone looks at him and says, you spelt it wrong. No, I didn't. And nobody says, no, you can't do that. So you get these snowflakes with these wonderful social theories, and who says no? Or who says that's ridiculous? Is there anybody out there grounded in solid Canadian values? One of the greatest example of a grounded intellectual, to me, is Jordan Peterson. If you read his bio, how he grew up, trapping, shooting, fishing, hunting, there's someone who understands the common Canadian, the average Canadian, the people who comprise the bulk of this country. Now, the city snowflakes don't get this. Their world, as I've said this before, Toronto is not Ontario, and Ontario is not Canada. A lot of the city snowflakes have never been exposed to rural Canada, and any province have no contact and no understanding of rural people, rural problems, and rural life. I don't blame them for this lack of exposure, but I do fault them. It's not that you don't know. There's nothing wrong with not knowing. If you don't make the attempt to learn, then you're ignorant. If it's germane or relevant. Back to the academic system. I worked at St. Mike's College, U of T, as a maintenance carpenter. I've had occasion to rub elbows in a social setting and a professional setting with highly educated professionals, with doctors when I worked at Princess Margaret Hospital, with professors when I worked at U of T, St. Michael's College, at social events. Sometimes I've had a chance to meet, I dated a lady who was in that whole spectrum. I've dated a few who were involved with, let's say, the educated professionals, university educated professionals. Most of them, it was actually, at the time I used to get a little torquey, but now I kind of laugh at it. Most of them regarded me somewhat akin to the way you would regard a talking chimpanzee, you know, an amusing curiosity, and definitely non-mainstream. But when they found out I was a carpenter, they automatically assumed I was somewhat mentally deficient. And that's intellectual arrogance. Some of them were very down to earth. Some of them were pleasantly surprised and engaged you in conversation. But a lot of times you were judged by what you did. Like I said, it was at that time, I don't get torqued about it. But sometimes it degenerated from confusion on their part, not knowing what to make of me, to outright contempt for this poor simpleton who couldn't pursue a higher education. Well, I'm sorry, I started working at 17. I never had time to pursue a higher education. I met these people, I call them book smart and life stupid. And it's almost scripted with a lot of the academics and a lot of the teachers. You can almost write this as a script. It's almost archetypal. Lived at home with mommy and daddy. Went to school, went to university, paid for by mommy and daddy while they lived at home, or if they lived at the university, paid for mommy and daddy. They lived in the dorms, the university housing. Met their significant other in university. Here's where it starts to diverge. Sometimes one or the other would quit university, go to work to support the other in their studies. Sometimes both of them would continue their university education, pooling their resources, supported by mommy and daddy, or grants or loans. Graduate, move back with one parent or the other parent, or get a small apartment. Again, generally often with help from the parents, or find a job and get out on their own. There are variations on a theme. The point was that until you actually get out into the working world, all of these things, grade school, high school, universities, these are protected environments. These are, your focus is learning, not living so much. It's learning. They don't learn today life skills. Home ec. Anybody older like me remembers when home economics was a standard course. Civics. Civics was a standard course. Your responsibility to your society and your society's responsibility to you. Things, basic things. Don't spit on the sidewalk. Don't litter. Basic courtesies. Please, thank you. Hold a door open for somebody. Basic courtesies. A lot of these are gone. Hold a door open for somebody. Don't even say thank you. Or someone, you're right behind them. They see you hit the door and just let it swing. Okay, no biggie. Ignorant is ignorant. But it's self-absorbed people who just don't understand. These were the old values that, again, Trudeau Sr. in this big wave that he swept through Canada and just changed the entire Canadian landscape. So you've got these academics out there who have absolutely zero real life experience. Everything has been this protected enclave, from university to teachers' college and then into the schools. They haven't been out there in the hard scrabble end of life. I like to say I've got a degree in life, and I graduated from that summa cum laude, if not magna. So my viewpoint is predicated more on reality and observation and logic and reason than it is on visceral responses, which a lot of people respond to. I understand the era I grew up in. I understand the difference between a conditioned response, which is the visceral reaction you have to something you find distasteful, versus the reasoned response. Some things are bred in the bone. I've been hit on by homosexuals. I found it distasteful. No more or no less than a woman who's subjected to unwanted sexual attention. It's no different for a guy. I didn't react violently. There was no need for it. I was not being sexually assaulted. I was being hit on. I've worked with gays. I've worked with lesbians. I didn't give a good goddamn, and I don't, about their sexual orientation. My sole concern was, do you do your job? And are you a nice person? You do your job well, you're a nice person? Shit, I'll go for a beer with you. You hit on me or deride me, belittle me, then yeah, go piss off. So you got this crop of left-leaning academics, and the thrust on education today seems to me very strongly to be towards left-wing liberalism, if not out-and-out communism. And I'm watching that. The rise of the Communist Party. I did a post on that. Watch it if you wish. Communism Redux. And I don't understand it. Again, in spite of all the evidence out there, you get these people focused on their little theories, and they're going to push these little theories without an understanding of consequence, without an understanding of the ripple effect, without an understanding of the broader ramifications. They don't get it because they don't have the life experience. That's the problem with a protected enclave. My brother reduced, years ago, his daughter was having problems with a teacher, and he wound up reducing the teacher to tears. Basically, he pointed out, you don't know anything. You're an educated idiot. Education and intelligence are not synonymous. I've met educated idiots, book smart and life stupid. I don't deride them for that. It's just like, my God, you have no idea of what it's like in the real world. There are people, like I said, who cross over, who understand hard scrabble life and the soft life. I got exposed to, in my dating life, a lady who was a fairly high flyer by my standards in the professional world, traveling business class instead of coach, and the airplanes, and things like this, and go out and drop $8,000 on dinner for six, stuff like this. Like, come on, you know, yeah, it's nice, but I envy that. To be honest, maybe a little bit. But I have skills and competencies that they could never match. They have their place. Ford, God bless him, I've remarked on this before, is forcing the universities, at the risk of funding, to go back to what they were supposed to be, institutions of higher education. They have to now allow all, all different schools of thought. You should be, as a university student, exposed to a massive amount of information, different viewpoints, different belief systems. This is how you make a determination. Pro, contra. You determine what you're going to believe, or what you're going to espouse, or what causes you're going to jump on when you get the maturity and perhaps the life experience. But you should know that these things exist. You should not downshout somebody from the left, for instance. You should not downshout somebody from as a homosexual, from the Muslim, let's say, campus Muslim organizations, campus Jewish organizations, campus Christian groups should not be derided or insulted unless they bring it upon themselves. There is no room for prejudice. You should be exposed to different viewpoints, different thoughts, different belief systems, different attitudes, different social mores. Determine who and what you wish to be, but to just blindly swallow a narrative and then follow it without due examination is stupidity. And I've been in discussions, when it's come down to it, with educated professionals, and I'm bringing up from life experience and from observation, I'm bringing up points they can't counter. Why not? You ensconced yourself in this cloak of academic invulnerability, and then you found out it's the emperor has no clothes. Someone will understand that analogy. I have no axe to grind with them. I am ticked with the current educational systems, extremely ticked with the political correctness that's permeating, trickle-down effect from the universities to the high schools to the grade schools, and now, like I said, even kindergarten. For the love of God, there are things that are age appropriate. Snowflakes are turning out more snowflakes. When I go to some of the rallies and you see the counter-protesters, the Antifa types, and the Canadian Socialist League, and out-and-out communist flags flying, and I'm like, what? What are they teaching you? I actually had one Antifa type tell me, haven't you studied history? Well, I have studied history quite extensively. A lot of it military history, but that really did shape a lot of our Canadian landscape. Old values are not bad values. Some of them were, some of them had to be changed. But there was a lot of good, solid Canadian values that, unbeknownst to the Liberal Party, still exist in rural Canada. Values of hard work, values of self-reliance, values of common sense. I've dealt with people up there. They were not well educated, not very articulate, but they had common sense and life skills up the wazoo. They could do anything, like my father. My father could do carpentry, electrical, plumbing. He could do it all. He could build a house from scratch. I used to joke and say, if you let my father loose in a forest with a penknife, come back in a year, you'd find a wooden city. He was an extremely competent man. I share some of that, as does my brother. A lot of people are one discipline, and that's their world. That's not what they're supposed to learn in university. Diversity of education is going to produce a more well-rounded citizen. Exposure to other ideas is going to produce a more well-rounded and intelligent person. Academia seems to have lost this basic concept. I would love to see a return to that. I would love to see more Jordan Petersons. I would love to see Ford's mandate to the universities implemented across this country, where the academics are forced to do what they should have been doing in the first place. Let's hope that the tide of conservatism that is sweeping across Canada gains more and more momentum, because the Liberals have had their day and the snowflakes are going to scream, but you are yesterday's people. Canada going forward needs better people than you. Thank you.